RB,
What's up, Pastor P?
how did we get here?
Uh,
How did we get here?
Nobody but Jesus.
That's right.
Nobody but Jesus.
Hey, thanks for being here.
Man, it's my honor. Thank you for inviting me to the house that Paul built, huh?
So, you know, it's ironic. I want to take a minute just to welcome everybody because we don't know where you are or where you're watching. There's probably just two of them out there. My
That's
mom
right. And my wife.
your wife and my mom are
That's
the only
right.
people watching. But we are live. There's nothing scripted. This is called a conversation in black and white, and this is between two pastors and two good friends.
Yes.
Just trying to have a conversation. And you and I have had these kind of conversations so many times over the years.
Yeah.
But they're always in private.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes we talk about some tense things. Sometimes we talk about some awkward things. But it's always in those awkward moments that it seems like empathy is really born.
Yeah.
And so what we wanted to do tonight was just get together, two friends, and instead of being in private, we wanted to go public. And
That's
so let's
right.
just go public and let's share a little bit of our hearts to anyone that wants to tune in and watch. You said this is the Paul that house built, but this is what's so ironic about this, is I would not have a job here at this church if it were not for Richie Butler.
Tell the story, bro, because I was going to bring it up.
Nobody knows this. I literally would not have a job at Highland Park Methodist Church. I was hired while I was in seminary to run the gymnasium. I'm sweeping the gym, I'm running the gym, I'm doing nothing but recreational programs. Nobody on staff even knows who I am. And they offer you the job to run the contemporary worship ministry of Highland Park United Methodist Church. I didn't know that. I didn't know you then. I didn't know that then. And you turned it down. You turned it down. And
because I knew you were the right man for the job.
Sure. You turned it down, and when you turned it down, somehow I got wind of it that there was this opportunity. And I remember going to my predecessor, Mark Craig, and saying, hey, if that guy doesn't want the job, I do. And literally, had you not turned it down, I mean, you would be here right now. And of course, you've got your own extraordinary ministry. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Newly appointed to St. Luke United Methodist Church.
No, St. Luke Community United Methodist Church. Yes.
Which historically is an unbelievable platform.
Yes.
It's a mighty platform.
Yes, it is.
I know you're more than up for it. But so I wouldn't be here. That's crazy. I would not be in this position if it were not for you turning down. It's weird how life converges and diverges. But thanks for being here.
We're here today. And
we're here today, and I don't want this to feel like this isn't a road game for you or a home game for me. Yeah. This is just an us game, and I'm blessed that you're here, and we're just going to talk.
Talk about the one. There are probably three things in our society we don't like to talk about in mixed company: race, politics, and religion. And so we're going to talk about race.
At least one of those?
Yes, at least one.
At least one of those, and probably two of those. But when you and I get together, we just talk. And I ask you a lot of questions. You ask me a lot of questions about how I feel, what it's like to be a white guy. I ask you what it's like to be a black man, a black clergy.
Yes.
We just always have done that in private. So.
That's right. Just like you went to a funeral for one of your musicians, and you just talked about how the experience, and you were waiting to go in, and they put you on program just out of the blue, right? In a black.
That was the most intimidating experience ever.
Yeah.
And I remember calling you saying, "Why didn't you give me adequate warning?" And I've attended black churches many times over the years, but I'd never been part of a funeral.
Yes.
And so the first one I went for, the father of one of our musicians passed away.
Yeah.
And I literally thought I would just show up out there in support and sit in the back and watch.
Yeah, I got you.
And when I got there, he said, "Oh, Pastor, I'm so glad you're here. You need to meet my pastor." And the term pastor in the black church commands a bunch of honor and privilege and whoa.
Yes.
And when they found out I was his pastor, they went crazy. And they're like, "You got to be in the service." I'm like, "No, I'm just here."
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have it any other way. And I remember saying, "No, I'm just here." And finally he said, "Would you at least sit with us?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I'd love this. I'll be happy to sit with you guys, up on the altar area." And we're walking in, and somebody didn't show up, one of the other clergy. And they said, "Where's Pastor so-and-so?" And they said, "Oh, he had a flat tire." And they said, "That's okay. Pastor Rasmussen could do the New Testament lesson."
And you're like, "What is that?"
Walking in.
Yes.
And so I veered out of line, and I had left my backpack briefcase on the side, reached in, grabbed my Bible, had no idea what I was going to talk about.
Yeah.
And walked down, and 3 hours later, 3 hours later, we wrapped up.
Yeah.
And I remember calling, and I called Richie and said, Richie, you did not give me ample warning about what kind of experience. But that's the kind of good, candid friendship we have.
Yes, yes.
Is to talk about these experiences and how do we find common ground when sometimes the culture is not always common.
That's right. That's right.
So
I'm curious because we're having this conversation. You and I've been discussing this for several years, coming together, and clearly the events of George Floyd has, unearthed something in America. And I'm just curious for you, and I see a response from my white brothers and sisters that I've never seen before. And you help me unpack, why George Floyd. I mean, we've had a number of other individuals who have, fallen prey to, police brutality. But this moment, why? Help me understand that.
You started in deep. So that's a good question. It's a really good question. I don't know that I know specifically why now, but I think I do. And I don't represent all white people. I just represent me.
Yeah.
But I can tell you where I am on this. This is kind of, for me, this has been my Emmett Till moment.
Okay.
And for anybody that doesn't know Emmett Till, I went on a civil rights pilgrimage about a year ago, and it truly was one of the more profound things I've ever done. And the first museum we stopped at was in Jackson, and they had a book called Let the People See, and it was about Emmett Till, and we learned about Emmett Till, saw a little movie about Emmett Till. I'd heard about Emmett Till in my history classes, but it didn't mean much to me.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know why, I picked up the book, and I devoured it between Jackson and Montgomery, Alabama, and remember reading it, and it's called Let the People See, and what Emmett Till's mom said when they said, we got to close the casket. Emmett Till's been lynched, 1956, and they said, we got to close the casket. She said, no, we're going to leave the casket open. Let the people see what this looks like.
Yeah.
And that was a catalyst, one of the catalysts for the civil rights movement, that people were exposed in a visceral way to the realities of lynching.
Yeah.
All right, that's a wonderful historical metaphor image. This, for me, for some reason, had a visceral response.
Yeah.
And when I saw the white officer driving his knee into the throat of George Floyd, there was something visceral. And I don't know if it was the knee or, frankly, if it was the hand in the pocket. There was something about the hand in the pocket and something so cavalier and so grotesque, it was visceral. And in that moment, it's almost like the anesthesia wears off.
Yeah.
We're pretty good. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
In the white church, we're pretty good about anesthetizing ourselves from the pain of racism. It doesn't hurt. We're anesthetized from it. We just kind of go on about our business. This was like a needle that cut through the anesthesia. And seeing that hand in the pocket and just the arrogance and the disrespect for human life,
Yeah.
I don't know, something switched. And I don't have all the answers, and we're not going to fix this problem just out of one reaction. But for me, it became more visceral, more emotional than just intellectual.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we have an intellectual problem. That's another one of those. And it moved from statistic, because there's been dozens, hundreds,
countless.
go all the way back as far as you want. There's been so many of these. We've talked about that over and over and over. None of those stuck me emotionally the way this one did. And I just thought, oh, it's okay. I thought, okay, we got to jump in the fray
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a combination of a trip I made a year ago, reading the realities of one mother saying, no, let the people see. And it touched a nerve.
Yeah.
And then for me, I just had to have a nerve touched.
Wow.
I don't know.
You know, I tell people when we think about, the issue of racism and how we combat it, I think we're all on a continuum, whether we're at a 1 where we're just completely dead and we're just not awake to it, to a 10 where, as the kids refer to it as you're being woke. And I think it's important that we recognize that hopefully, there are moments where it moves us from a 3 to a 3.5. And maybe this moment moves us from a 3 to a 7, if you know what I mean, where
Yeah.
it catapults us to multiple levels, and especially for my white brothers and sisters, because I think I've said this to you, and I say it all the time when I give speeches, that if Black people could have solved the issue of racism, we would have done it a long time ago.
Yeah.
We need our white brothers and sisters, and also, to be very candid, we didn't create it.
Yeah.
So we need our white brothers and sisters to dig in. And I know it's complicated, it's hard, and we'd rather ignore it and sort of pretend like it doesn't exist, or just, sort of stay in our space.
Use numerics. It went from a 3 to a 7. One, I think that's probably accurate. But for me, it also went from an us and them problem to there is only we.
Yeah, I love that.
That's it.
Yeah. That'll preach, Doc.
And and look, for most of my life, it's an us and them problem,
Yeah.
right? It's us and them, it's
Yeah.
us and them, and not totally, but you just kind of dip your toe in.
Yeah.
Something converted and said, no, you know what? There is only us. That's it.
Yeah.
It is it.
Yeah.
And I hope, representing a predominantly white church, that this is a for real moment.
Yeah.
Because you've probably seen countless times white evangelical megachurch pastors maybe jump in, maybe not jump in, and then it's a flash in the pan and they go back to business.
Yeah.
And I will say, from the white community, there seems to be more momentum than I have ever seen before.
Yeah.
I was at this meeting. This was pretty cool. This was about a week ago. A young lady right over here who I'd never met before. She and her brother, they're young, and they wanted to do something, and they sent out some random invitations to a bunch of clergy, Black and white, and nobody knew who else was going. So you weren't going to be seen. You didn't know who was going to be there. And I went just because I thought God wanted me to go, and there was all these clergy there. It was unbelievable. And this was kind of cool in this little microcosm. When I said there's more momentum, all the Park Cities churches were there, all predominantly white. Park Cities Pres was there, HP Pres was there, Park Cities Baptist was there, Highland Park Methodist was there. And what we realized is on this issue, for this the first moment in time, we're all on the same page.
Wow.
All of us were on the same page. We got to laughing, not because it was funny, but because we said, if they get mad at us in our church, there's nowhere else to go. Before, on other topics, if I would preach about it, they get mad at me, they go to HP Press.
Yeah.
Or they get mad at something that Brian says at HP Press, they'll come here.
Yeah.
And this time we looked at each other and said, look, we're all in this together. And I just say that to you as a matter of hope, as a measure of hope, because I do sense, and I hope that it lasts, prayerful that it lasts, there is a sense of momentum.
Yes.
And there is a sense of commitment from the white church to wrestle with this issue in ways that I have not seen in my ministry ever. So I hope that has lasted.
What you just said, as a African American growing up in a Black church, you would stand up to your seat and say, "Preach, Paul, yes."
You guys get more response.
A little call and response. You just gave me something to shout about.
So what I learned is, this can be stereotypical, but in the white church, if they're all silent, that means they're with you.
Yeah.
The Black church, if they're silent, that means you're about to get run off.
You better.
And so you better get some amens.
No, you better start singing.
That's right.
If you're singing,
You
preaching.
gotta break out.
I also agree with you. I think this is first of all, I think our nation is at a crossroads, honestly. And I've said this time and time again, I think, and not to drag politics in it, but I think, the election of Barack Obama and Donald Trump represents that part of that crossroads for us, both of them. And I think we're trying to decide who we want to be as a nation. And what I've witnessed as a result of the protesting, first of all, typically when there has been protesting in the past, it's been a sprinkling of our white brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. This is more salt than there's pepper in some instances. I mean, really. And even places that are protesting. Des Moines, Iowa, or Salt Lake City, you expect Dallas or Chicago, where there is a robust population of people that look like me. But I do believe that there is, and this has been going on for maybe 20 days? I don't know. There is continued commitment to this protest. And there was a point in time where if I wore this, something was wrong. And today, I mean, people embrace the notion or recognize that Black people have been treated different and that their lives do matter.
Yeah.
So I completely agree that I preached a sermon a few weeks ago talking about a racial Pentecost. I believe God is bringing forth, because as you just talked about the pastors coming together, I think we just need to welcome the Holy Spirit. That's what helped to bring about the Pentecost, is the Holy Spirit coming down. And then they have all these different tongues, which speaks to the notion of understanding. We got to we got to welcome understanding. And I think that's sometimes hard, especially when we think we already have the answer, or we know, or we think we know more than someone else. And I encourage, because I've gotten a lot of my white brothers and sisters calling me and say, what can I do? What can I do? We need to do something. And I always tell them, I just need you to listen right now.
I'm laughing because I bet your phone's ringing off the wall.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
From white clergy.
No, and business buddies. I'll say this. You remember a few weeks ago when there was protesting, and there was the idea that they were going to protest in the Park Cities. I got a lot of calls from some friends like, man, do you know who's behind the protest? I'm like, you on your own.
Everybody wanted to know what's up.
Yeah.
You mentioned listening. And from a white perspective, I'll probably be guilty of painting some broad strokes here.
Yeah.
We want to fix stuff. I want to fix it right now.
Yeah.
What's the problem? Let's fix it. Mobilize the resources. Let's fix it. We can't fix this instantly.
Yeah.
And we can't fix this with a cliche.
Yeah.
I do know we can only fix this by authentically listening and saying, okay, and saying, wait a minute, we're part of the problem and we're going to be part of the solution.
Yes.
It can't be them.
Yeah.
So I hope that we, and I say we, I'm talking about Black clergy and my white friends that are saying, you know what, we've got to listen. And then we got to act. We can't just listen forever. Yeah. We got to listen, and we can't hide behind listening. But we've got to start with that.
And I want to encourage, I think listening is the beginning, but I also believe before we jump to a place of doing, I think we need to get to a place of being. Mm-hmm. Be still, be silent, be uncomfortable, wrestle with, and I know this is hard when what you've been taught may be part of the problem. Some of the, for example, I went to a high school in Austin known for football, John H. Reagan. For some reason, I don't know who gave me this information, I always thought he was a poet. Come to find out, he was part of the Confederacy.
So your high school's named after?
Yeah, my high school. Yeah, and they've renamed it. But some of those things that are near and dear to our hearts, and I'll give you an example around that. So there was a post on Facebook after they renamed the high school, and this is an African American who was dismayed that they renamed Reagan High School because of our rich history in football. We won state championships, and Richie Butler was the quarterback, the man.
RB, you got
Yes, that's right. And he couldn't believe that happened. And my thought or response to him, John H. Reagan didn't believe you were human or equal, that you were less than. And now I do believe that they probably could have renamed it Ronald Reagan High School, and everyone would have been great. And I wish they would have done that. It would have been a home run because you'd have maintained at least that win in terms of Reagan. But those are some of the things that we actually have to unpack and wrestle with, and that's uncomfortable, and it's very personal. And I think we all have to get on that journey, and I believe walk it with each other. And I believe in that process, we will start to find ourselves in a better place to then do some things. Because I think sometimes if we're not in a good place of being, our doing can be dysfunctional.
Well, we're guilty of that.
Yeah.
Just saying, oh, here's the solution.
Yeah.
And the way I've seen it over the years, and certainly in my own life, the further you are away from a problem, the simpler the solution seems.
Yeah.
Why don't they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, tap into the American way, and get to work and behave and blah, blah, blah. Because we're so far away from the problem.
Yeah.
And so the listening means we got to be drawn into proximity.
That's right.
To fully understand the problem.
Yeah.
Because it's the easiest thing in the world just to come up with a simple solution. You know, all those rascally kids, you just think, and your own family, when you got kids, the further you are away from it, it seems like it's such an easy problem and an easy fix.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's complex, it's layered, it's thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And we got to get closer to the problem. That's one thing I have seen is our church and all churches. We got a lot of wonderful things going on here, and we got a lot of warts. But through that all, there is a desire to get closer to the problem.
Awesome.
I have seen that from the people of Highland Park Methodist Church. They want to get closer to the problem.
Yeah.
And the closer you get. You mentioned the naming of your school. This is one thing confessionally is hard for myself. Again, I don't represent all white people. I would have a lot of critics on this, but it's like the monuments. I didn't know until I was 49. I'm 52 now. I was a history major. History major, cum laude in college, love history. I had no idea of the intentionality post-Reconstruction of installing monuments to Confederate icons in order to perpetuate a sense of racism.
Yeah.
I had no one ever told me that.
Yeah.
I never read anything about that.
Yeah.
I never got a lecture about that. I was 49.
Yeah.
And I started to read some things and thought, oh, there was some intentionality behind that. And it's because there again, the further you are away from the problem, what's the big deal? It's just a monument.
Yeah.
When you get in there, you think, oh, this problem is bigger and more complex than we realize.
Yes.
There's something out there.
Yeah.
So I think the proximity to the problem, at least from my perspective, is vital.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
if we're not willing to do that.
I was just going to add to what you just said around the whole notion of education and understanding history. And, I may get run out of here, but, Carter G. Woodson, who's classified as the father of Black history, and he wrote a book called The Miseducation of the Negro. And, I think we have to own the fact that maybe there has been the miseducation of America in some regards, because of what you just described. And we've got to, tell the story that embraces our damaged past as part of who we are. But that's not the sum total of who we are. I mean, especially if people of faith, if we believe in a risen Christ, then we know that our brokenness is not the end. That there is a resurrection.
Preach it now.
There is a resurrection, but here's the beauty, and I do want to preach a little bit.
Come on. Bring the heat.
Here's the beauty. In order to have a resurrection, you've got to have a Good Friday. And so I think we got to sit in that pain and wear it, bear it, but know that, come Sunday, we can take off the death clothes and embrace a new future, a new tomorrow that only God can provide.
You mentioned misinformation or
miseducation.
The miseducation. I had something that challenged me. I don't even know if I've told you this. I'm aware of a lot of my own, or I'm becoming more aware of my own ignorance, historical ignorance. But I mentioned that trip. I went a year ago on the Civil Rights Pilgrimage. It was truly transformating.
Yeah, I know, because we talked about doing something.
But we went to Selma.
Yeah.
And we walked the bridge. And it'll rattle your cage, and you learn about it. So I came back, and I'm the chaplain here for the SMU basketball team, you know that. And we got a lot of Black players in the program, and I love them, and I think they love me. And I got back, and I was telling the head coach he said, where you been? I said, I told him where I'd been. He said, you got to come talk to our guys. They'll love this. And so I went, we had a team meeting, and I said, I'd been to Selma, and everybody had this quizzical look on their face. And I said, have any of y'all seen the movie Selma? No, there's 13 African-American players in the room out of 15. Not one hand went up, not one.
Yeah.
I said, have you seen the movie Selma? Not a single hand went up.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, time out. You haven't seen the movie, that's fine. Does anyone know the significance
Of Selma.
of Selma relative to voting rights, not one hand went up, white or black. And I thought, how do we not know this?
So
How do we not know this? So I had to back up, and I'm gonna shut up. I had to back up and contextualize the importance of Selma, Alabama to 15
college
student athletes that have been fairly accepted, duly and fairly accepted to one of the most prestigious universities in the country. And Selma was like a glaze. And I thought, what are we doing? How have we not educated any of us? Anyway.
So I just wanted to throw this point out. That has been part of the rich history of the black church. Because growing up in the black church, and I'm saying the church I grew up in, I think the black church of today has also moved away from teaching and educating around black history. I mean, I think we tried to do such a job of being cross-racial and, trying to attract others that we have denied and sometimes ignore and not willing to engage, because I grew up knowing all that kind of stuff and I didn't get it in school. It was in the church.
You got it in the church.
Along with Jesus, we understood the history and the story, just like our Jewish brothers and sisters. I mean, they teach it. And there has been this move, away from that in especially, black evangelical churches where, they don't want to think about this. Black evangelical churches sometimes don't want to talk about race.
I'll probably get in trouble with this, and we're guilty of this. So anything I say is not an indictment of other churches. It's a reflection of things that I see here sometimes too. A lot of churches, particularly big churches, have devolved into management and therapy. That's it.
Wow.
We got to manage the organization and therapize the congregation, make them feel good about Christ.
Yeah.
Both of those things are important, but when we just stop there, we get in trouble.
Yeah.
And what's troubling, I think, for me, is that the church has abdicated the throne of responsibility, if you will, for some really important issues. It's gotten so problematic now. Like, I'll get emails, you probably do too, letters that say, don't get political. And I interpret political as I would endorse a candidate or not endorse a candidate. But what they mean is don't talk about this one issue. Well, that is ironic because there was a time when the moral authority was born out of the church.
That's right.
In the scriptures.
That's right.
And something like racism would have been our problem. I think about John Wesley. We're both Methodist, speaking out against slavery. He didn't default to the secular authorities to figure these kind of massive sociological, theological problems out. He said that's a church's problem to own. We have abdicated the throne of all that and said, let the secular folks figure that out. Let the government figure it out. Let the city figure that out. Let somebody else figure that out. And then when we touch the topic, they say, well, don't talk about politics. We gave it over to politics. It's the church's problem. And we got to go back and reclaim some of our authority on some of these gigantic moral issues of the day, because they're not just moral issues, they're theological issues. If we are many nations born of one blood and we squander that unity that God created, that's blasphemy. That's heresy. And so anyway, I'm pontificating.
No, preach. No, you're not. You're preaching, man.
This is where everybody in the white church would get real quiet and go, what's he saying? But they'd be,
and in the black church, they're like, bring it, Paul, come on, Doc.
But we have given up. We have given up our authority on some of these. And now when you talk about them, they think you're not supposed to talk about them. Yes, we are. We just gave up the right years ago.
That's right.
And now we're disappointed in the results. Well, so maybe the church, black church, white church, we got to get back in the game. Not just about issues of racism, but a lot of.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway.
we have, I mean, especially in the African American community, I mean, we hold fast to having this prophetic voice in the black church and pastors. And I grew up, just expecting that, you're going to preach, you're going to talk about it. And you're going to have a voice. And again, to your point, I think over the, last 20 to 30 years, there's been, this move to, to you. I mean, I think you hit it on the head, hit the nail on the head. I mean, this notion of comfort to make sure you got, butts in the pews and, and you are, and, having multiple campuses and that whole play and not really speaking to, because I always ask people, if Jesus were alive today, would he be a mega church pastor and activist?
Man, I'd be afraid to answer that question.
I mean, and I'm not talking about
know.
I'm talking about the raw Jesus. And
I'm with
also
you.
I believe part of his death had politics written all over it. We may not acknowledge the politics that, he was he was challenging the systems. He was challenging the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And I think they were like, and I believe when he went into the temple and the money changers out, they're like, you done gone too far. You messing with our money.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason we were scared is we read the part where when he did that, he got crucified.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And so that's why part of it, we read that part, we read ahead, and we're like, let's lower the barrier, let's lower the bar of prophecy and just And I think, I don't know about you, but there is a part of me as a pastor that if I take someone down from a conviction, if I take the congregation down from a conviction standpoint, from a prophetic standpoint, I feel so obligated to carry them back up because the gospel is good news. And we're pretty good at that.
Yes.
I'm kind of a locker room kind of guy. I'm hyper optimistic.
Yes.
But sometimes if you do that enough, you ignore the realities that it's okay to maybe take the congregation into the ditch and leave them there. Because they're grown men and women, and they're smart, smarter than I am, and they're thoughtful, and maybe they're going to go away and repair themselves. I don't have to just bring them up. But sometimes I do anyway. Sometimes you preach out of that paradigm, and it's easier to stay in the comfort zone.
I think you raise a powerful point, and you talk about the ditch. I would liken it to putting people in the valley. And if you think about it, a valley is simply a depression between two mountains. So, but you got to get people to that place so that they can experience, liberation on another mountain. And to your point, as a pastor, and especially you have a heart of a pastor, you care about your people. And you, early on in my ministry, man, if someone lost a job, I literally would go online trying to find them a job because I thought my job was to save them or fix their problem. And I then realized my job is to get them to the one who is the answer. And if I can get them there in a place that literally is liberating and free from all of our hangups, where the load is lightened and the yoke is easy, that place where Jesus is, and if they can discover him, then they can climb out of the valley, onto that mountain.
Come on now. Bring some more heat. Hey, RB, let me ask you a question. When you're laying awake at bed at night, can't sleep, thinking about all this stuff like I do, you think, God, I wish white people knew what? It didn't have to be for religious, but about, I wish white people knew what about you or about, first of all, wait a minute, time out. We got to get this settled. Is it African American or is it black? Because I can promise you, there are days when I don't know and I'm tiptoeing around thinking, I don't know. Should I refer to African American or black? And I can promise you our congregation wrestles with the same thing. Is it African American or is it black? Start there for me. Because there's probably things I wish my white people knew, and then take that question and say, I wish white people knew what?
First of all, it is not the N-word.
We're agreed on that.
Honestly, I think it depends on the setting and the person and the community. Either fits and works. If you refer to someone as black, I don't think that's...
Black's okay.
Black is okay. African American is okay. I don't think you'll get run out of a room if you use either one. And maybe you just want to...
Beyond those two...
Maybe you want to default to
beyond those two, you're in danger land.
Yeah, just stick with the black and stick with African American.
I'm okay.
Yeah, don't go Negro, and just stick with black and African American, and you'll do good.
Okay, that's more practical and helpful than you know.
But I think that's one of the important points. is, and I know for my white brothers and sisters trying to navigate and understand, what do I say? How do I say it? And you asked me the question. And I think in genuine relationship, if we're seeking understanding, then we have to ask the question for our own edifications. And also I think it gives this sense of authenticity to the relationship when you are sort of open and vulnerable, because, let's be real, sometimes we don't ask questions because we don't want to be perceived as vulnerable or weak,
Sure.
or and not knowledgeable. So I think it's healthy. And I think for African Americans, and here's an important point, because I know a lot of Black people, we're tired of talking. And I will say to my Black brothers and sisters, if our white brothers and sisters are ready to talk, we got to tune in and we got to start talking. I mean, and I know that's
No,
and I always say life is
humility.
not fair. Life isn't fair, but if we want to move this thing forward, we have to engage with our white brothers and sisters when they're ready to talk. And I think this is one of those moments where people are ready, and we've got to capture this moment. And you asked, I guess your question was, what would people want to know?
Yeah, when you're laying in bed, I wish my white friends knew blank.
I wish my white
or
friends
understood blank.
Yeah, I wish they understood that we are just like them in terms of we have dreams, we have hopes, we have fears. We want our children to have a better life than we. That our skin color should not be weaponized. And also, I think that we, and let me say this, that Black people are not looking for revenge. We want to be treated fairly. We want justice. And some of us just want to be left alone. But we just, so we're not, but because I think and you tell me, there may be this fear of, because I also understand that one and only time the NRA really pushed for, gun reform was when the Black Panthers showed up on the state capitol in California in the 60s with assault rifles. And so there was, because we always, Black people joke about this. If you really want to get gun reform, let all the Black people start going buy guns. and so I think there's this concern, well, if this has been done to you, if the shoe's on the other foot, what are you going to do to me? And we're past that. I think we just want to be treated fair, equitable, and be able to live in peace and experience what we all strive for, and that is the American dream, if you will.
I think, again, I keep saying this, but because I'm speaking for myself, but it's taken me 52 years. Black people don't want special rights. They want equal rights.
Yeah.
And as long as you think, oh, they want special rights, you get, ah. And I think I hear you saying that, hey, we don't want special rights. We want equal rights.
Yeah.
We want equal rights. And I think as a leader of a white community of faith, we have to own that.
Yeah. Now I think the challenge
and you said something about we don't want revenge. We just want to be cared for. I said something in my sermon last week, and I usually can't remember what I preached the following Monday. But I did say that if we listen to God about this issue, we're not being asked by either the Black constituency or God to be less white.
Yeah.
We are asked to be more Christ-like.
Yes.
All of us. And I do think that is a historic fear for whites. I'm going to have to be less whatever. I'm going to have to be less white. They want something from me.
Yeah.
No, they want equality for themselves.
Yeah.
And that does not require a demand that we be less white. It does require we be more Christ-like. And it's certainly, at a minimum, more empathetic. And to acknowledge that the pain, One of my favorite James Baldwin quotes ever is, never ask a sword how a wound feels. I wish I'd have come up with that myself. I think we're good at doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
And to acknowledge that, you know what, we may not get it, the depth of pain, but we should understand that it's real and consider that there's a far deeper level of pain than we could understand.
Yeah, yeah.
And because we don't feel it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah.
in my own life, when I have these giant seasons where I just feel like I am not a racist at all and I got no racist tendencies, and you hear people say, he don't have a racist bone in his body, to acknowledge that because I don't see racism in my daily life does not mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And there is a reality of pain that I am not privy to.
Yeah.
And I got to get closer
Yeah.
and at least empathize
Yeah.
with the pain. I may not be able to solve it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you know, when you talk about empathy, and I even heighten it to what I classify as a kingdom empathy that God is calling us to. Think about this.
Tell me about that.
When Jesus went to the tomb where Lazarus was, you know, his body laid, and if you remember, he gets there, and what does he do? He weeps. Now,
And he waits.
yeah, but he waits in it, but when he gets there, he weeps. But
Yeah.
think about this. He knew what he was going to do. He knew he was going to raise him. So why in the world, if you know what you're about to do, and there's about to be a celebration, why would you weep? Because I believe Jesus was trying to tell us and inform us and have us to embrace kingdom empathy. Because he was literally saying to Mary and Martha, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
I grieve with you. Even though I know what I'm about to do, I'm about to raise your brother. You're going to be celebrating. At this moment, I recognize the pain, and I am weeping with you. And I think God is calling the church, his believers, to have that same kind of kingdom empathy.
I think empathy, I hope it's not a lost virtue or value.
No.
Because we didn't invent it.
Yeah.
God blessed everyone
With it.
with it.
Yeah.
We smother it. But man, if we could let it out a little bit, and that's true for everything, not just racism, but when you can empathize a little bit in Jesus,
Yeah.
he was the best at.
Now my daughter would say, Daddy, you have too much empathy because I cry at everything.
It's like in Galatians, bear one another's burdens.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's a reference to empathy.
Yeah.
It's not enough to say, I feel fine. Now I got to bear how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And this stuff is hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was easy, we probably would have figured it out. But
So
it's doable.
Forrest Gregg, my football coach at SMU, he used to have us do these, what they call green bays. You run in place, and then he say, hit the ground, and get back up, and run, hit. And this is before practice. I mean, he is wearing us out before. And I remember this like it was yesterday. One time we were doing that, and we're dog tired, and we haven't even started practice. And he says, men, and Forrest is telling men, if this were easy, everyone would be on the field. No one would be in the stands. And I truly believe if this were easy, it would have been fixed by now. But I think people like yourself, me, and countless other individuals who are random, like a housewife or janitor or the CEO of a company, I think if we recognize this is hard work and that I just got to roll my sleeves up and I've got to lean into this moment. People like using that leaning into stuff now. So lean into this moment and recognize that if God is for us, the racist cannot be against us.
Look, amen. Hey, let's talk about the church for a minute, like the capital C church, because I want to get your thoughts on this. People will say the church is the most segregated place on the planet Earth every Sunday morning, the most segregated hour.
Yeah.
And by a definition of segregated, that's accurate.
Yeah.
Predominantly white church, predominantly black church. How do we change that? Should we change that? Is that, in fact, a pure reflection of segregation? Or is it nuanced this may be a loaded question, but is it nuance where it's a reflection of style? And here's why I'm asking this thing. I've been to your church. Nobody would segregate me out. You guys would love it when I show up. White guys show up. Love it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing here.
Yeah.
There's no intentionality to say we don't want blacks come. We would love it.
Yeah.
You would love it. But still on Sunday, you're surrounded predominantly black community. I'm surrounded predominantly white. What's that about and how do we fix that?
Yeah.
This isn't a trick question. I really want your thoughts on this, on how do we forge more experiences where we understand it, just starting at the local church level.
Yeah, yeah. First of all, I would argue that some of it, and I don't know what percentage, maybe more than 50, 60% of it is probably cultural and personal preference because of how we grew up and what we're used to when it comes to worship experiences.
Right.
You know, in African American church, we are expressive. And there is high energy, and if the preacher
3-hour funerals.
Yeah.
We're an hour, and then you got to get on.
And it could be longer depending on who the dignitary is. I mean, George Floyd's funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a long funeral. I think it started at 11, then end, and I think they had to wrap it up because they had to get to the graveside.
It was a long funeral.
But you know, we celebrate.
So some of it's cultural.
Yeah, some of it's cultural.
And that's okay.
Yeah, I think it is okay. And I think to your point, when we start to, and what I've tried to articulate in our worship experience is that there may be people who are not, quote unquote, non-expressive. It doesn't mean that they're not worshiping. And so we don't want to fault that. And there may, and so you want to, you know, invite an experience that allows, you know, all expressions to be welcomed and affirmed and not looked down. Because in some place, you know, even in some, you know, sort of silk stocking black churches, I mean, you'll have, if someone says amen or, you know, sort of expresses themselves, they'll look around like, that's not here.
Really?
Go over to that other church. I mean, so that's also part of it. So I do think a lot of it is cultural. And I'm getting to a place where I'm less concerned about us worshiping together. I want us to work together.
All right, run this out. Talk to me about this.
So when it comes to the issues of social justice, I mean, we need to converge on issues that change lives in addition, and I'm not saying worship doesn't, but issues that change day to day, you know, whether it's issues of education, we got to work together. Issues of poverty, we have to work together. Issues of racism, it is fine for us to worship because much of that is tied to our, again, you know, our cultural upbringing and those differences. And I don't want to devalue and also have an appreciation for each other's worship experience. I'll give you an example. You know, so I'm used to being in a vibrant, dynamic, you know, atmosphere. But I remember early on, and this is just before I started my first church, Union Cathedral. I went to, and it was somewhere right off of Oak Lawn. I went to a predominantly white church that was probably more high church. And it was different than what I was used to. But on that Sunday, that's what I needed.
Yeah.
I needed a place of just stillness.
It fed you.
It did for that day and that moment. And so I don't want to ever devalue, because we all come to God from different points of view. And we need to honor and respect. And I think that also embraces the diversity and the recognition of our differences. And we're not trying to all, you know, fit in a box.
Hey, one of the things you've done that is so brilliant, and we've participated in it here, we hadn't talked about it a lot. We probably need to talk about it more. We're certainly going to have more, but tell me and tell whoever's listening, unpack Together We Dine, Project Unity, but specifically Together We Dine.
Yeah.
And how that's working and what your dream is for that. And I want to tell you how our church feels about that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to celebrate because when we did the Year of Unity and we rolled out Together We Dine. The first Together We Dine took place at Highland Park.
Right here.
United Methodist Church. So booyah, Wonder Twin Flowers.
It was awesome.
So thank you. And actually to also just be real, I think between Highland Park and the Below Mansion, and I think you guys may be, the winner, but there have been more Together We Dines here than any other place.
We got to stay with it.
That's right. So with Project Unity, we've sort of taken a step back in this moment, and we realized, okay, we got to do something. And the question, what can people do? And so we've concluded we need to, launch an initiative further. Because we know that we're in this for the long haul, and to engage people to be part of something because they want to do something. But I also want people to be in a place of listening and learning. And so we're rolling out this concept called Together We Can. And the focus is that we're going to focus on rooting out and curing our nation of the cancer of racism. And only together can this be achieved. And there are 3 things we're asking people to do, which you're doing it, I'm doing it. We want people to wear the bracelet, and it's Together We Can bracelet. And it does 3 things. It says that I'm not silent. So when someone sees it, it says I'm not silent. It also says that I'm part of the solution. And it also raises the point of accountability. Because if you're wearing this, that means you have to be intentional. You have to be thoughtful. You can't just, spout off things. And so it raises this point of accountability. It's a reminder to us. The second thing is to the point around Together We Dine. We want people to participate in Together We Dine. It allows people to engage in courageous, safe conversations around race and to start listening. And that's just the beginning. It's not the cure or the end all. It is part of the process of moving us forward. And I believe that we want millions of people wearing the bracelet, and I want millions of people to participate in Together We Dine.
What happens at a Together We Dine?
So typically you'll have a table of 6 to 8 people at your table, and you'll have a block of questions. And those questions range from when was your first experience with racism to, how was race conveyed or discussed it growing up? And what are you doing different than your parents? What are your hopes and fears for race relations in America? So generic questions, but so I get my question. I have 2.5 minutes to respond. Everyone else's job at that table is simply to listen to your account, to your experience, to your response to that question. Then the next person gets their question, and whatever that question is, they have 2.5 minutes to respond. And everyone else gets their question, and everybody else's job is simply to listen. And it really becomes a process of us learning to listen to each other. And also, I think through that process, we begin to appreciate and understand that, man, we're not as different as we thought we were. And I'll give you one great example. So there was an older white man who was at a table. I had to facilitate one event. It was at the Below Mansion. And he got the question, when was your first encounter with racism? And he's probably in his 70s. And Richie Butler, the liberated person, literally in my mind, I'm like, what can this white man, what can he say about his first experience with racism? And he taught me something, because he said when he was a little kid, his family was driving through West Texas, and they stopped at a restaurant. And they said, there was a black waiter serving them, and he said to the black waiter, "Thank you, sir." And his father says to him, "Son, you never say thank you to a Negro. You never say sir to a Negro." Oof. And he said, he recognized that was wrong. And he said he and his siblings spent the rest of their lives trying to liberate their father. And they said he died with this
cold heart,
racism in his heart.
Yeah.
And it flipped my script and appreciation and understanding, because I didn't think he could relate or even connect with racism. And so that's the kind of unpacking and discovery that takes place at a Together We Dine.
And how many, you have these going all over the...
Yeah, all over North Texas. And the vision is statewide, and then if we can take it national.
We have another one coming up, and I think it's virtual while we're in the
virtual
pandemic.
Next week.
Yeah, we hope to get back sooner or later in person.
We are, but we're focused on, we're actually hosting one tomorrow with SMU Athletic Department.
Awesome.
And Rick Hart is, has a whole entire athletic department. And then we're doing one with you guys next week. And then we have a public
These
one.
things are significant. And they're, for me, I've done 2 of them. And for me, the reason they're significant is they're experiential.
Yeah.
They're experiential. Even this is, this experience between me and you, but whoever's watching, not necessarily. We're giving them data.
Yeah.
Data and facts will not get it.
Yeah. You got it. You said it.
Data and facts will
You got to get close.
Get it.
Yeah.
And we're trying to logically explain our way into or out of how we feel about racism.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced it will not happen.
Yeah.
Unless people, when I went on that, I keep referring to this trip, but to stand in Ryan Stevenson's museum in Alabama and see exhibits that deal with lynching, to do that next to a young black girl or black boy or man or woman, child, adult, it's experiential. There's something palpable about that because I'm interpreting it one way, they're weeping, interpreting it another way, and there's something, then you get back on the bus and you start talking about that, and you drive 350 miles back to Dallas or whatever, and you're processing it. It's experiential. It's not data. Look at this. We're never going to data ourselves out of this.
That's right. That's right.
I can tell my black friends ad nauseum how many times the criminal justice system has worked in their favor.
Yeah.
That their experience is what's driving.
Yeah.
And the same thing.
Yeah.
Most of my friends' assumptions about black people, including mine, have nothing to do with experience. When they do, all those assumptions are overturned.
That's right.
Anyway, I'm pontificating here. But what I'm doing is applauding your effort because it is tangible.
Yeah.
It's significant. And it is more than a starter kit. It's substantive, getting people in an experience.
Yes.
And it's amazing how the barriers fall in a moment. And then you just hope those seeds get planted and sown by the Spirit, and somehow it changes. So we're with you on this.
Well, thank you, man.
And then you've done other things, though. Together We Ball.
Yeah.
That brings what, police and what?
Police and community. And so police, pastors, community together. We've been doing that for 5 years. Last year, the Mavericks came on as a partner, so we were really excited about
that brings law enforcement together with
community. Yeah.
So there's not so much fear.
Yeah. Because one of the things when we think about it, especially in communities of color, in most of us, our interaction with law enforcement is typically in a time of crisis. Something has gone wrong.
Yeah.
And we want to create these spaces of calm where we can build bridges and relationships with each other. And so
experience.
Yeah, experience. And I'm gonna tell you about that experience because one of the volunteer referees, the first year we did it, he came up to me afterwards and said, Pastor Butler, I want to thank you for organizing this because I really have issues with law enforcement. He said, but this has shifted my attitude because they were not in uniform, their police uniform, they were in basketball uniforms. Yeah. And it humanized on both sides. And I don't want to get into the policy and politics of policing, but at the end of the day, we need each other.
Yeah.
I mean, even to this day, if something goes down, I'm calling 911 because I want the police to show up.
Yeah.
I just don't want them to turn on me.
Well, we could talk about this forever. One of the things that's so problematic, in my opinion, is we're being presented with a binary option. Yeah. That to support one, you have to hate the other. That if I am pro-justice and I don't like racism, I have to, by definition, hate law enforcement. Yeah. No, I don't. There is honorable law enforcement. Yeah. And if I want to support law enforcement, the binary choice would be, well, then by default, I must hate blacks. Yeah. Right? Because I love law. Yeah. We got to get over that. Yeah. And there's so much of the world that if I'm going to be about this, that means I have to hate something else. Yeah. And when we hate, we're going eyeball to eyeball with the devil. Yeah. And we have to somehow got to do that. Yeah. Because absolutely we need law enforcement. I liken it to the idea, and I think in America, we have this notion that if somebody
if you win, that means somebody else had to lose.
Yes.
And so we don't believe in win-wins. But if we're people of Christ, I think the cross gives us all a win, and we can figure out how to have a win for law enforcement and a win for Black Lives Matter.
Well, what you're doing with Together We Ball is also not inconsequential or insignificant.
Yeah.
It's awesome because it creates yet another experience
Yeah.
where folks who are never going to be logicked or dated into a level of trust, factored into the only experience.
Yeah.
And so I think the more we can do of these, and you're already out there, man, you're out there. And we've been behind you on Together We Dine, but we got to multiply.
Well, help us, man.
We got to multiply these efforts because they're working. A couple things, and we're probably running up on our time. In your church, you would just be getting lathered up, right?
That's right.
You're just rounding first.
I
You got
just
3 more
rounded-
bases.
The musician would get on the organ, and then,
You're just getting started. In ours, then people be going, when's the benediction? When do we get to go home? But let's wrap up with this and some ideas that maybe both of us have. But 'cause I know our congregation, they are rock solid people trying desperately to be disciples of Christ, and they want to do something.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot. Real quickly though, what can we do?
Yeah. Not to, I mentioned the notion of listing, but I honestly, that's why we came up with the vision for Together We Can. I think that's a logical step in terms of, it may not seem like a big deal to wear a bracelet, but as I just described, it sends a message. Yeah. And if you got a bunch of people, especially a bunch of, white people wearing bracelets that say, yes, together we can, that means I'm not silent.
Yeah.
And think about it. I may not have the answer today, or I may not be able to communicate or know the next steps, but I am telling you that I am committed to anti-racism. I'm committed to being part of the solution. So that's why I just reiterate that. And then I want to continue to encourage people, if you want to engage in real thoughtful, conversation around race, let's get a Together We Dine at your company, get a Together We Dine set up at another church, your social group, or, get some friends together. It needs to, as you just described, it needs to multiply. Yeah. Because think about it, if millions of people are doing it, just like when there's an exercise craze, millions of people, the multiplier effect and, the wellness that happens. And I think we need to start the healing and become well when it comes to the matter of race. So, I just encourage people to dig in, to be part of that effort. And the last thing that Together We Can, we want to focus on, and that is 1 hour per month. And think about this. If racism is a cancer, then your 1 hour per month is the salve, it's the healing, it's the treatment that cures us. And that's and I'm not talking about for a year, but just think about it. If you commit once, that means I'm going to read a book. I'm going to, rather than going to watch another Justice League movie, I'm going to go watch Just Mercy. I'm going to take someone who's Black or someone who doesn't look like me to lunch. I may have some preconceived notions, or it may mean, in Project Unit, we're going to lay out a series of options that one can engage in on a monthly basis, but it's that 1 hour per month. And I spoke to a law firm last week, and I talked about the Together We Can and 1 hour per month. And the managing partner is predominantly white law firm, silk stocking law firm. And the managing partner said, we're going to incorporate 1 hour per month as a part of our learning and teaching at our law firm. So it's that kind of engagement.
1 hour a month.
1 hour per month. Yeah.
All the Together We Cans.
More
listing opportunities.
Yeah.
You and I have talked a lot about doing some mutual serving opportunities and some worshiping opportunities.
That's right.
And
you have to practice your hoop.
I'm going to close with this. Before ministry, I was a college basketball coach, and I was in charge of recruiting, and recruited a lot of African-American players. And I remember being so naive, thinking when I went into a home, I had to act black. I'm glad we didn't have social media or video back then, because it was awful. And somebody pulled me aside one time, another coach, and said, look, stop it.
Just be Paul.
You just need to be
Yeah. Be
sincere,
Paul.
man. They don't want you to be black.
Yeah.
You look like an idiot. And just be you.
Yeah.
And it was a big lesson for
Yeah.
me.
Well, man, I want to thank you
It's,
for being you.
Nah, look,
Seriously, bro.
right back at you.
Yeah.
I couldn't be more grateful for all you're doing.
Yeah.
And
Well, thank you for your leadership.
you're in my prayers. I know I'm in yours.
Yes. Yes.
We're going to keep rallying our congregations.
That's right.
And you got a church here that's behind you, behind the issue, and we want to be part of the solution.
Thank you, bro.
So,
Thank you.
Hey, let's pray. And then
All
we'll
right.
shut up. We'll pray and then we'll Heavenly, gracious, and loving God, we give you thanks and praise. I give you thanks for my good friend, my brother in Christ, Lord, Richie, and that all he does in ministry, that you just continue to bless it. Lord, let the seeds of this conversation be sown by your Spirit, not by us, not by our opinions, but let us just be vessels of your Spirit so that we can be the kind of church that you want us to be. In your Son's holy and mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, my man.
Bless you, man.